Parthenon is a strategy consulting firm with 5 offices across 5 different cities globally. We cater to clients across sectors, be it K-12, publishing, early years education, higher education, vocational training, English language. In each of these sectors, the largest and the biggest client, the biggest company in each of these sectors, we are the exclusive advisor. So be it K-12, Cognita, higher education, Laureate. Publishing, we advise almost all the top 4 or 5 publishing companies globally. Specifically in the early language education, in the early years education, we advise KinderCare, which is the largest pre-K company globally. It's based out of the US. We also advise Bumblebee, which is one of the largest company in the UK, catering to the early years market. When we look at some of the facts, it turns out that India has the largest pre-K age cohort across compared to any other market globally. And that's not surprising. That's what we all know about. And this situation is going to remain for the next 10 to 15 years, where India will be the largest market, purely in terms of the number of children in the relevant age group. US is currently at about 20% penetration. So 1 in every 5 child is actually in some kind of formal education in the early years group. China, it's close to about 7%, growing quite rapidly. India, on the other hand, is less than 1%. We are quite under-penetrated yet. What it shows me is that there's a huge potential for this market to grow, and this market we expect will continue growing in future as well. If you look at the Indian market in aggregate, we have about 100 million students in the relevant age group category. Of those, roughly about 10% are currently enrolled in some kind of pre-K. And there are about 220,000 students who are currently enrolled in branded pre-K. And over the last 2 years, we have seen a growth rate of close to 30% purely in terms of enrollments. This does not take into account the growth in value, which would add additional 4 or 5 percentage point on top of that. But purely in terms of enrollment, the market has actually grown at about 30%, increasing penetration over time. Now, the interesting fact remains that we are still at less than 1% penetration. How much can we go? And the numbers that you're showing actually caters to very, very top strata of income category and income cohort. If you adjust it for income cohort as well, the penetration of formal pre-K in branded preschool is less than 5%. Whereas if we consider the same number as compared to China, China would be operating at close to about 20 to 30%. So again, the point remains that this market is quite nascent and will continue to demonstrate very high level of growth. Other point to note from this chart is that going forward and even historically, tier 1 markets have always continued to capture a lion's share of the market. So of the incremental growth from the last 2 years, the tier 1 market has actually captured about 50 to 60%. As an entrepreneur or as an investor, when we are looking at different businesses in the pre-K space, we continue to ask the question as to what is it that makes one provider more successful than the other. And we have broadly identified 2 elements of success. One is around customer or consumer experience. I would put customer experience as more important than the consumer experience, because at the buying process, it's the parents who actually end up deciding which pre-K to select for their child. And when parents decide, their behavior is not very different. It's not surprising to see safety, security, hygiene, and quality of infrastructure as one of the top 2 selection criteria. Academics are important, but comes below safety and hygiene. And that's a challenge that we have faced a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of pre-K chains in India facing as they have continued their growth path. If you look at the parent selection criteria, they decide in 2 steps. At the first level, they come up with a consideration set of 5 or 6. And again, most of you are sending your sons or daughters to the pre-K institution, so you would have gone through the same process at your end as well. Which actually now leads me to the second aspect, which is from an entrepreneur perspective and an investor perspective, I would look, I have 50 centers all over India. How do they perform relative to others? And we have done this exercise across different center-based business, not just in pre-K, but in tutoring, in after-school tutoring, in English language training. All the center-load business demonstrate this level of high variability. The second aspect that I wanted to touch upon, which is my last point on how to look at network management, is around how you decide to roll out centers. Now, a lot of thoughts that come along to us that, look, we should go tier 2, tier 3, and just expand our reach. But we do believe there's significant growth still left in tier 1 market. And the centers that have been successful are the centers who have actually doubled down on a single market and expanded the market share in that particular city. The aspect at the end of the day, I mean, if you achieve scale in the pre-K business, look, you are not going to get real estate for cheaper rate. You're not going to get teachers at a cheaper cost. All the cost of running a pre-K centers would remain the same. The one variable that you have in your hand is actually cost of customer acquisition. And cost of customer acquisition at the end of the day is a function of how well-known and how, what's your relative market share at that local catchment area. And pre-K at the end of the day is a very, very catchment area business. So if you see on the chart as well, even within a 15-minute or 30 minutes drive time, you should double down and expand your presence so that you have a higher relative market share that allows you to acquire customer at a slightly cheaper rate. So those were some of our insights that we have gathered over time, working both from investors as well as entrepreneurs, trying to assess this market. And hopefully these are some of the useful insights for the panel, for the members or audience to take away as to what are the things that you should look for when you're looking at the pre-K business. Thank you very much.